When Naram Golan came out of the restaurant and was going in, so I kick above his head. He was, wow, you know?
Throughout the 1990s, Jean-Claude Van Damme was not just an actor. Hollywood elevated him into a living icon, a man marketed as a real fighter, someone who could truly fight, someone believed to be capable of taking down anyone when the cameras were off. Van Damme became the embodiment of strength, discipline, and absolute masculinity. But when the lights went out, another image slowly surfaced. Not a hero, but a man obsessed with control. Van Damme gained a reputation for being hot-tempered and rude, with an ego so big, he looked down on everyone around him. Until that night. The night Van Damme stepped into a world that didn't run on fame, but on blood and consequences. A territory ruled by some of the most dangerous street rappers in America. Men raised on real violence, real weapons, real survival. One small mistake, one sentence that crossed the line, one look of superiority aimed at the wrong people. And in that moment, Jean-Claude Van Damme learned the most expensive lesson of his life. Muscles don't always equal power. Van Damme off-screen. The backstage reputation was real. If action cinema of the 1980s and 1990s was a battlefield, Jean-Claude Van Damme was its most arrogant outsider. He didn't have Schwarzenegger's size. He wasn't stone-faced like Stallone. The Belgian newcomer introduced something different: deadly elegance. Few people know this, but before becoming a professional karate fighter, Van Damme trained as a ballet dancer. He carried the physique of a Greek statue paired with almost unnatural flexibility. His rise was explosive. From a nobody sleeping in his car, JCVD shot to the top with Bloodsport in 1988, the film that defined the underground fighting genre. The image of Van Damme fighting while blinded, or his iconic 180-degree split, became trademarks no one else could touch. What followed was a streak of hits: Kickboxer, Lionheart, Universal Soldier. Audiences were hypnotized by his cinematic combat style. Spinning kicks suspended in mid-air, perfectly sculpted muscle, a face built for the big screen. On screen, Jean-Claude Van Damme stood for justice and precision. Off-camera, the so-called muscles from Brussels was reckless, volatile, and often his own worst enemy. A star trapped by an oversized ego and a temper with no off switch. At the height of his fame, Van Damme didn't just act in movies, he ruled the set. In his world, there was no collaboration, only compliance. From Thailand to Mexico, he demanded extreme privileges. Entire film crews were left waiting for hours, not because of logistics, but because he didn't feel ready to perform. Van Damme saw people through a brutal hierarchy. If you weren't a legendary director or an A-list star, you barely existed. Crew members later recalled that Van Damme only showed respect when he believed the other person matched his status. Big-name directors were treated cautiously. A-list stars received guarded respect. But stunt performers supporting actors and behind-the-scenes crew were often met with cold indifference, arrogance, or open contempt. He regularly dismissed advice from real martial artists on set, convinced no one understood fighting better than he did. During the late 1980s and early 1990s, an unspoken rule spread among stunt performers. If you're in a scene with Van Damme, expect real contact. According to stuntmen from his early action films, Van Damme often struck harder than required. Not accidents, not slips, intentional force. One stuntman recalled being badly dazed after a fight scene and having to leave the set early. He never filed a complaint. The reason was simple: he was the star, and I wasn't. More troubling still, Van Damme's recklessness would eventually lead to a lawsuit that sent shockwaves through Hollywood. The Cyborg lawsuit, 1989. When a movie strike became a real-life disaster, in 1989, Van Damme was working on the post-apocalyptic action film Cyborg. During a combat scene, he was paired with a stunt performer and supporting actor named Jackson Rock Pinkney. Pinkney was not an ordinary extra. He was a former serviceman with a powerful build and real physical training. Still on set, Van Damme was the star. He was the one calling the shots during fight scenes. According to court records, in a sequence involving wooden knives, Van Damme was supposed to perform a controlled simulated stabbing motion toward Pinkney. Instead of executing the move using standard safety technique followed by professional performers, Van Damme either carried away in the moment or trying to make the scene look as real as possible, swung with excessive force and poor control. The result was devastating. The prop knife struck Jackson Pinckney's left eye. The impact was so severe that Pinckney permanently lost all vision in that eye. The injury was not only physically traumatic, it effectively ended his military career and destroyed what had been a promising future as a stunt performer. Jackson Pinckney filed a lawsuit against Jean-Claude Van Damme in North Carolina. It was an uneven fight, a rising international star versus a disabled stuntman. Pinckney argued that Van Damme acted either deliberately or with extreme carelessness, ignoring the choreography and safety rules. He also claimed that Van Damme had a pattern of hitting co-performers harder than necessary in order to show dominance. Van Damme's legal team responded that the incident was a tragic workplace accident, an unfortunate risk inherent in high-intensity action filmmaking. In 1993, the jury delivered its final verdict. They sided with the stuntman. The court concluded that Van Damme had acted with gross negligence. He was ordered to pay Jackson Pinckney $485,000, a very large sum at the time. The money could not restore Pinckney's eyesight, but it dealt a serious blow to Van Damme's reputation. It confirmed long-standing rumors that he was dangerous and unprofessional on set. Van Damme did not just want to look like a fighter. He wanted to be recognized as a real one, even when it was unnecessary. According to multiple witnesses, Van Damme had a habit of challenging stunt performers during breaks, testing his strength without consent, and turning rehearsals into real confrontations. When confronted about it, he did not apologize. His response was simple in meaning: if you can't handle it, you shouldn't be here. But even Van Damme's defiant attitude would eventually fall silent when it collided with a form of power that came not from a script, but from the fists of a true old wolf. Van Damme picked the wrong old wolf. When Hollywood power went dark, it was a freezing night in February 1998 in New York. The location was Score's, an upscale club in Manhattan, where wealthy businessmen, superstars, and figures from the underworld came to burn money. Amid the noise and flashing lights, Jean-Claude Van Damme walked in like a king. At that moment, JCVD was at the peak of his fame, but also deep in a battle with alcohol and an ego that had grown far too large. At another table, sitting quietly with a drink in his hand, was Chuck Zitto. To understand why crossing paths with Chuck Zitto became Van Damme's biggest mistake, you need to understand who Chuck Zitto really was. Zitto was not an actor. He was the former president of the New York chapter of the Hells Angels, one of the most feared motorcycle clubs in the world. He was a heavyweight boxer, a hardened enforcer, and a bodyguard for names like Mickey Rourke and Sylvester Stallone. Zitto had the eyes of a man who had survived countless real street wars. When sunglasses became the spark, everything started with Van Damme's habit of psychological intimidation. Seeing Zitto sitting there, JCVD, already fueled by alcohol, decided to walk over and assert his status as the #1 action star. Instead of offering a respectful greeting, Van Damme stood directly in front of Zitto, his face filled with arrogance. According to Zitto's later account on The Howard Stern Show, Van Damme began making mocking comments about Zitto's fighting ability. He looked at Zitto with contempt, as if the man in front of him were nothing more than a low-level bodyguard. Van Damme removed his sunglasses and leaned his face in close, a move he often used to intimidate people on set. He started insulting Zitto's pride, even bringing up personal matters in a provocative tone. In Van Damme's mind, Zitto would either back down or at worst trade words until security stepped in. But Chuck Zitto did not work for Hollywood. The punch that ripped through the night, Zitto stayed seated, but his hands tightened. He warned him, "Jean-Claude, you're drunk. Walk away." But arrogance had completely blinded the muscles from Brussels. Van Damme didn't step back. He moved forward, reaching out as if to shove Zitto's shoulder. That was the final mistake. In a flash, Zitto stood up. No flashy splits, no movie-style theatrics, just pure street boxing. A thunderous hook. The sound of impact cut through the club's music. The movie star, who had defeated hundreds of enemies on screen, collapsed onto the bar floor like a dropped heavy bag. Van Damme lay there, blood at the corner of his mouth, eyes unfocused, staring up at the ceiling of Scores. The entire club went silent. Dancers froze. Security stood still. They had just witnessed a martial arts icon taken down in under 3 seconds by a middle-aged man in a leather jacket. Chuck Zitto didn't press further. He stood over the stunned superstar and delivered one cold line. "This is real life, Jean-Claude. Nobody yells cut here." The incident exploded across tabloids soon after. Van Damme tried to stay silent to protect his image. Chuck Zitto did not. He went on radio shows openly describing how he had taught the action star a lesson. Years later, when the two crossed paths again at an event Van Damme approached, Zitto shook his hand and admitted his mistake. The punch it scores didn't just hurt Van Damme physically. It shattered his inflated ego and forced him to confront himself. If Chuck Zitto's punch in New York was cold water thrown on Jean-Claude Van Damme's arrogance, the next confrontation with a hip-hop soul would be an even harsher warning. Van Damme would nearly pay with his life for the habit of picking the wrong people. Tupac Shakur. The Hollywood party that nearly turned into a bloodbath Los Angeles around 1994. A post-MTV Video Music Awards after-party was being held at one of the most exclusive clubs in the city, completely booked out for a VIP crowd. The air was thick with expensive perfume cigar smoke and pounding bass. The most powerful names on the planet were packed into the room. Van Damme arrived looking polished and flashy. A silk shirt open at the chest, slicked back hair shining under the lights, and entourage circling him. At that moment, JCVD was riding the peak of his ego. He moved through the party like a king inspecting his territory. And that oversized ego pushed him into a fatal misstep. He approached Madonna. Madonna was seated in the VIP section with friends. Van Damme, fueled by alcohol, walked over. Instead of a respectful greeting, JCVD leaned in close, made slick remarks about her looks, and deliberately projected an exaggerated display of male dominance. What he didn't realize was that just a few feet away, a Black Panther was watching his every move. That panther was Tupac Shakur. At the time, Tupac and Madonna shared a special connection. When Tupac saw the muscles from Brussels touch Madonna's shoulder and lean into her ear with clear disrespect, he jumped to his feet. He didn't call security. He didn't signal the outlaws. He walked straight toward Van Damme, cutting through the actor's bodyguards like an arrow. The suffocating standoff, Tupac stepped directly between Van Damme and Madonna. A deadly silence fell over the VIP section. Van Damme looked down at the rapper nearly half a head shorter with a smug, dismissive grin. He reached out and poked Tupac in the chest with his index finger, a serious insult in street culture, and said, "Kid, do you know who I am? I could kick your neck in before you even blink." If Van Damme thought Tupac would back down, because this was Hollywood, he was wrong. Tupac didn't move. He was ready to collide right there. At that point, it was no longer about words. One shove, one wrong shoulder bump. And that Hollywood party could have turned into a real fight between a movie star and the most dangerous rapper of that era. Sensing that the situation could explode into a full-scale clash between a gangsta rap crew and a Hollywood security team, friends from both sides, and club security rushed in. They formed a human wall, forcing the two hot heads apart. Van Damme was dragged away furious. Tupac stayed put, shouting insults aimed straight at the actor's fake toughness. After that night, Tupac never forgave Van Damme. In later interviews, when asked about action stars, Tupac often responded with biting sarcasm. "They're just trained puppets. Don't bring movie fighting into my life unless you're ready to see real blood." As for Van Damme, that night taught him a lesson even more expensive than Chuck Zitto's punch. Martial arts might help you win a fight, but arrogance can get you killed when you cross people who treat death as just another day. And after Van Damme's explosive encounters with rappers, Hollywood insiders continued to whisper about one more name. One steel boundary that even the most reckless figures never dared to cross. Ice-T. When rap isn't Hollywood lights. If Van Damme is the perfect product of polished gyms and cinematic illusion, then Ice-T is a product of burning asphalt and the harshest survival codes of South Central Los Angeles. Ice-T was never a rapper manufactured by record labels to play the role of a bad boy. He is true first-generation gangsta rap. Before he ever held a microphone, Ice-T held a gun. He served in the U.S. Army, but he also lived inside the criminal world, connected to gangs, and experienced prison firsthand. When he stepped into Hollywood, Ice-T brought that alpha instinct with him intact. He didn't flatter the system. He didn't try to be easy to work with to please producers. To Ice-T, fame is temporary. Respect is untouchable. He doesn't go looking for trouble. But if trouble comes looking for him, he doesn't solve it with legal paperwork or public apologies. He handles it the street way. Direct, final. That calm, menacing, but disciplined presence turned Ice-T into solid rock. A man even action stars, including Van Damme, knew better than to test. Jean-Claude Van Damme. From a sickly child to a man who forgot how to bow. Before becoming a martial arts icon of Hollywood, Jean-Claude Van Damme was once a child so fragile that few believed he would ever stand firm against life. Born on October 18, 1960 in Belgium, into an ordinary family with an accountant father and a flower-selling mother, Van Damme grew up without advantages. His childhood was shaped by illness, a thin body, and thick glasses. At school, Jean-Claude wasn't respected. He was a frequent target for bullying. Every time his name was called, the boy would flinch and shrink as if bracing for the next blow. His parents saw everything and refused to look away. His mother enrolled him in classical ballet to improve posture and help him gain control over his body. His father chose a more direct path. He brought his 10-year-old son to a karate gym with one simple hope. At the very least, he should be able to defend himself. Those two choices, seemingly unrelated, became the foundation of a rare transformation. Ballet gave Van Damme flexibility, rhythm, and precision of movement. Karate gave him discipline, strength, and mental toughness. He wasn't the strongest student, but he was the most fluid. At 12, Van Damme joined the National Karate Center. 4 years later, he made the Belgian national karate team. From 1976 to 1980, he recorded 44 wins and only 4 losses in semi-contact competition. That chapter closed the image of the weak child forever. Jean-Claude grew fast, muscles hardened. Fear left his eyes and was replaced by defiance. The bullies disappeared. Attention followed. Then admiration. At 21, Van Damme won the Mr. Belgium bodybuilding title and opened a successful gym in Brussels, earning $15,000 a month. For many people, that would have been a perfect ending. For Van Damme, it was only the beginning. He sold the gym, gathered all his money, and moved to the United States in 1982 with less than $3,000 and barely any English. No roles, no connections. He worked as a security guard, a limousine driver, and took anonymous background roles, waiting for an opportunity no one promised would come. Then Hollywood had no choice but to notice him. In 1988, Bloodsport brought Van Damme into the spotlight. He didn't need many lines. His body and every kick spoke for him. Kickboxer proved it wasn't luck. By Universal Soldier in 1992, Van Damme officially entered A-list status. By the mid-1990s, he peaked with Hard Target, Time Cop, and Street Fighter. But it was at that very peak that Jean-Claude Van Damme began drifting onto another path, one where the spotlight slowly gave way to dangerous misdirection, both in his career and in his life. The marriage spiral. When Jean-Claude Van Damme lost himself. Throughout his life, Van Damme married 5 times to 4 different women. Yet not a single marriage truly escaped the shadow of fame, desire, and an ego that kept expanding beyond control. The woman most deeply connected to him was not a Hollywood star, but Gladys Portuguese, a professional bodybuilder who stood by Van Damme back when he was still an unknown struggling to survive. Gladys was more than a wife. She was a witness to his entire transformation, from a broke dreamer to a global action superstar. They had 2 children together, Christopher in 1987 and Bianca in 1990. But even a family was not enough to anchor a man who had begun to believe the world belonged to him. Fame arrived too fast. Lucrative film contracts, non-stop media praise, and constant temptation slowly pulled Van Damme away from reality. He could not tolerate restraint. He began to believe success gave him permission to cross every moral boundary, including loyalty. His marriage to Gladys did not collapse from lack of love. It collapsed because Van Damme no longer knew how to live within the structure of a family. Just 2 years after the divorce, Van Damme remarried Darcy Lapierre. But instead of learning from the past, he plunged deeper into the same lifestyle this time, with far heavier consequences for both his image and his career. The Kylie Minogue affair. When movie fantasy spilled into real life. In 1994, on the set of Street Fighter in Thailand, one of the biggest scandals of Van Damme's life erupted. While Darcy Lapierre was pregnant, Van Damme entered an affair with his co-star Kylie Minogue. Thailand's humid heat, a chaotic filming schedule, and most importantly, Van Damme's deep addiction to cocaine all collided. He later admitted his drug use cost thousands of dollars per week. Between drug-fueled highs and distorted confidence, the line between performance and reality collapsed. Years later, Van Damme openly admitted the affair in a shocking interview, saying, "It would have been abnormal if it hadn't happened." That confession fixed nothing. The American press turned on him, instantly reshaping Van Damme from a symbol of masculinity into the image of blatant betrayal. Darcy Lapierre did not hear the truth from her husband. She learned it through the headlines. The divorce followed quickly, dragging in custody battles and massive financial demands. From that point on, Van Damme's image began to slide. Box office headlines were replaced by reports of arrests for drunk driving, domestic incidents, and failed rehab attempts. Audiences lost trust. Major studios started to see him as a liability. Years later, Van Damme admitted bitterly, "I had the whole world in my hands, and I kicked it all away myself." Addiction, bipolar disorder, and a man falling apart. Substance abuse didn't just damage Van Damme's career, it destroyed his mind. In 1998, he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and began treatment with mood stabilizers. He attempted rehab multiple times, sometimes quitting after only a week. It wasn't until 2008, when he starred in JCVD, that Van Damme truly confronted himself. The film, in which he played a raw, broken version of his own persona, earned critical praise and became a rare moment of redemption. For the first time, audiences didn't see an invincible fighter. They saw a regretful, exhausted man trying to stand back up. The final harbor called Gladys. As everything collapsed, the one person who returned was Gladys Portugues. In 1999, they remarried, a rare and almost unbelievable event in Hollywood. Gladys didn't come back for money or fame. At that point, Van Damme had nothing left to show. She returned to pull him away from drugs, support his treatment, and repair his relationship with his children. In 2015, Gladys filed for divorce again, citing irreconcilable differences. But just months later, Van Damme begged for forgiveness. He declared, "Family is everything." Gladys stayed. She sacrificed her own career to keep a stable home for their children. A legend after the spotlight. Today, according to Celebrity Net Worth, Van Damme's fortune is estimated at around $30 million. Modest compared to his peak years, but enough for a life of comfort. The real cost of fame, however, was a personal life filled with scars. Jean-Claude Van Damme was once Hollywood's tiger, but that same tiger nearly tore himself apart by never knowing when to stop. His story is not just a personal tragedy. It is a cold warning about the price of fame when there is no moral anchor to hold you steady. Jean-Claude Van Damme. When a legend no longer lives in the past. In 2025, at the age of 64, Jean-Claude Van Damme no longer stands at the top of Hollywood, but he has never left the game. He exists in a strange middle ground, between a fading glow of past glory and a turbulent present, where every step carries the echo of a legend that once dominated an entire generation. Today's Van Damme is no longer a muscle-bound fighter throwing kicks under box office lights. He is a more complex figure, both a surviving action star from the golden era and an aging actor attempting to tell different stories, slower stories, heavier stories, and riskier ones. In early 2025, Van Damme returned to the screen as the lead in The Gardener, an action comedy released on Amazon Prime Video in France and several international markets. In the film, he plays a seemingly ordinary man living quietly, forced back into action when a violent past comes knocking. Critical response was mixed, praise and criticism in equal measure. Many felt the script played it safe and lacked ambition, but the numbers told a different story. According to platform data, The Gardener quickly entered the top 10 most watched films on Prime Video in Spain after its release, enough to confirm one thing. Even as times change, the Van Damme name still carries weight, especially for audiences raised on Bloodsport Kickboxer and Universal Soldier. A sudden turn. Legal shadows over the present. But 2025 was not just about films. Early in the year, international media reported that a criminal complaint had been filed with DICOT Romania's Organized Crime Investigation Unit. The complaint centered on an incident tied to the Cannes Film Festival years earlier, in which Van Damme was accused of being connected to women the accuser claimed were victims of a trafficking network. The news sent shockwaves, not because a legal conclusion had been reached, but because of the severity of the allegation and the weight of the name involved. An action legend long seen as a symbol of strength, masculinity, and cinematic power suddenly appeared in a far darker narrative. Van Damme's response came quickly. His legal representatives denied all allegations, calling them baseless, unfounded, and speculative. They emphasized that Van Damme had never been aware of nor informed of any illegal activity involving the individuals mentioned. This story is more than backstage gossip. It is a rare moment that exposes the fragile line between fame and respect. In Hollywood, Jean-Claude Van Damme grew used to people bending under his name and the image of an unbeatable fighter. But when facing someone carrying real street energy, someone who does not fear fame or respect the system, the rules change. What do you think about this story? Did Van Damme truly pick the wrong people to cross? Comment your thoughts below. Like and subscribe to continue uncovering the dark sides, real clashes and long falls of entertainment icons.
All data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast. There is still so much more to explore: stories of resilience, legacy, and truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos now appearing on your screen.